Welcome everybody to our recap of Werner's keynote here at reInvent 2021. I'm Scott Weber, Director here at PwC's AWS practice and an AWS Ambassador. I'm joined by Justin Goosey.
Thanks, Scott. Justin Goosey here, Director at PwC and also an APN Ambassador.
So thanks, Justin, for joining me. It was a great talk again by Werner. I love Werner's talks because he starts to pull back the curtain on some of the technical things that AWS is doing, some of the scale, but also gives us some, I think, great advice that we can go help our customers with when we start building things at scale for our customers. And one of the interesting bits of data that he shared today that just is almost mind-boggling at some level that AWS is experiencing 60 million EC2 launches a day. And some of these numbers, you just gotta sit and let it sink in for a minute. And then he also added to that number has doubled in 2 years, which is, that's a growth rate that's just amazing. He then went on and started to talk about the AWS global network. And they've shared in the past little bits of data about that global network and how big it is and how many fibers they've got. And he was sharing that they're up to 40 dedicated, fiber lines, 100 gig fiber lines that AWS owns and operates. And that really was the platform for launching into a new release from AWS called AWS Cloud WAN. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see how AWS has continued to expose the global network to hybrid connectivity options so that everybody can benefit from that high-speed, low-latency network. So AWS Cloud WAN, new service that was announced today, sounds to me like it's probably the Transit Gateway version 2. Offers some really great features that you couldn't get with Transit Gateway out of the box. So for example, dynamic routing for inter-region peering or connectivity, for example. So it's going to be a really nice tool to extend SD-WAN to your AWS network. And that's not the only network service that came out, right? We talked about the private 5G the other day. Another one, Direct Connect Site Link, allows you to connect to Direct Connect locations and talk directly to them without having to go all the way to AWS and come back.
So that's like we could interconnect 2 data centers over Direct Connects now. That's pretty good because a lot of our customers are setting on direct fiber between 2 data centers. So it seems like maybe if they're putting in Direct Connects, we can eliminate a piece for them.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And then a few other features too around Transit Gateway, capabilities to do intra-region peering now, which you couldn't do that before. And then another interesting feature that I thought was the Network Access Analyzer to be able to detect unintended access outside of your network that maybe you didn't know about before. So lots of great features and services in the network space this year. Very exciting stuff.
Yeah, it definitely was. He then started to talk about something that's a favorite of mine to think about and talk about with our customers, which is Gall's Law, which is really this idea that you don't program complexity. Functional complex systems are actually made up of a bunch of very simple processes behind the scenes. And he's talked about this in previous years. And I think this is where things like Lambda become so important. It's this idea we're going to use these building blocks of small services doing one thing and combine them, and then we end up with a functional complex system. And that is something that I think sometimes we see our customers struggling with, and it's an area that we can definitely help them. He then started to talk about how AWS services really represent primitives that we can use. And I know you and I talk about, AWS sometimes seems like the box of Legos that was just dumped on the table and it's like, good luck, go figure out what you can build with it, right? But, there was a little bit of a discussion about primitives versus frameworks and why primitives are actually the better place to be from a building block because you can change them in and out a lot easier than you can frameworks. And then a humorous point in today's presentation by Werner was this idea that it's our fault as customers for everything that AWS has been building. The 200 odd services that we now have at our fingertips have really come from the ask of the customer. Right. So that was a highlight for me. Let's talk about Amplifi Studio. That was another new release today. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, Amplifi Studio, an improvement to the already existing AWS Amplifi service. Really helps to streamline the process for front-end developers to be able to build their web applications quickly. reduction of that heavy lifting to configure all the pieces. Amplifi does it for you out of the box, and connects the front end to the back end seamlessly for you. So I see a lot of potential there as we use that for our customers to quickly deploy things. So a great service that AWS released today.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting. They're really starting to tie in like some of those tools that your front-end UI designers would want to be using that you could directly pull in to help the UI builders leverage, and then tying it out really well to the whole source code, environment too, and even allowing you to do some data, database design, if you will, and then tying in those elements. So then let's talk about, some guiding principles. Werner shared that, over the last 15 years of AWS, they've really started to identify some great rules, if you will, around APIs. And he listed out 6, but there was 2 that really struck me. And the first one was, that if you define an API, that API has to be treated as it has to exist forever, right? And you can't then go and change those APIs. Once it's out, it's out. And that led to sort of the second important rule, I thought, of the 6, which was you don't break backwards compatibility. And I know like you and I, we've seen from other cloud providers where, they don't necessarily follow those rules. And, it's an inconvenience, and sometimes more than an inconvenience for some of our customers.
Right, and I think this kind of goes along the same lines of AWS offering services, and if they're going to deprecate them, they make sure that they give you a lot of time ahead of time to move off of them. So it's kind of in the same vein, I think, as well.
Yeah, I mean, 15-year anniversary of AWS, and they're just now talking about deprecating those original instance types in that original networking plane of what we now call EC2 Classic. Right. I mean, we're 15 years into this, and they're just and they're going to give customers multiple years to be able to make that change because they know it's going to be a heavy change.
Right.
Another announcement was around the CDK. What do we learn now about CDK?
Yep. So another improvement to an already great service, CDK version 2. I think some improvements around just the service in general to make it easier to use. They fixed some issues from CDK version 1. One of the things that they also improved was now rollback when you're deploying resources to reduce the amount of time it takes to continuously, deploy changes to your resources. So, great to see the new and improved version of the CDK, which I know that our teams use heavily as well too for our customers.
Yeah, and I think the CDK makes it really easy for software engineers and computer science people to adopt infrastructure as code. And it really cuts down on the amount. It's not a templating language anymore, so it's a lot easier to work with. It's object-oriented, just really helps our teams.
Yes.
Then he talked about something that we're hearing more and more about in the industry, which is sustainability and energy-conscious designs and architectures. And they introduced what they're calling sort of this shared sustainability model. We have in the past always had the shared security model, which sort of laid out what is a cloud provider going to do from a security standpoint, what do we need to do? And the shared sustainability model now, same idea. What is a cloud provider doing from a sustainability standpoint, and what do we as customers need to do from a sustainability point? But I think this is going to become really important for a lot of customers. I think it's an area that we can help our customers a lot. How do we help them design the best architectures for energy efficiency and sustainability? And, I think of Peter DeSantis' quote of, the greenest energy is the energy you didn't actually end up using. And this also led to now a 6th pillar in the well-architected framework dedicated to sustainability. Any other thoughts around ESG and sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, it goes right along with what they had talked about with the Graviton 3 release that we had talked about in the previous video of 60% energy savings, and AWS is the perfect example of making sustainable technology available.
Yep. One last thing we wanted to talk about was this new service, Repost.
Yes, Repost. So for anybody that remembers the AWS forums, I think we've, if you've used AWS, chances are you've landed in a forum at some point in time to try to solve a problem. Well, Repost now is kind of the V2 of the forums. So a new service AWS released today. And it's a great place for people to go and ask questions and learn new things, connect with the AWS community of other builders out there. So I think it's going to be a great resource for people to go ask questions, learn more about AWS.
Yeah, I'd be interested to dig in there and see how it gets used. So I think that's a wrap for reInvent 2021 for us. It's been great to be back in person, be able to do these sessions with you, be able to see people, customers, and get to some technical sessions from AWS. So thank you, everybody, and we'll talk to you again next year.
Yeah, thank you.